All right, everyone. So now that the 2023 draft is over, the Packers selecting 13 total players. Now I want to go over the 13 undrafted free agents that they have signed so far. The Packers roster is now at 89 total players out of 90, so I would assume they'll either sign another undrafted free agent here in the coming days, or maybe a veteran at quarterback or wide receiver or safety or something like that. Undrafted free agency is such an important part for the Green Bay Packers. It seems like every year there's an undrafted free agent that does really good in training camp and preseason, ends up making the 53-man roster. So I love breaking down these undrafted free agents. This is a team that needed a lot of players and talent and young players at that. I think this draft is very important for the future of the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, a lot rides on the production of Jordan Love and how he turns out to be. But I think if the Packers hit this draft and undrafted free agency really well this year, it could turn the tide for their team in future years if Jordan Love is a good quarterback. All right, so let's get this started with the 13 players they have signed in the last 2 days to make their roster to that 89 out of 90 players. First and foremost is tight end Cameron McDonald out of Florida State. He has a 2.52 RAS, not really an athlete here, 6'4", 237 pounds, a really, really bad 40-yard dash at 4.99. Not a good 20-yard split, 10-yard split, only a 30-inch vertical, and a 9'9" broad jump. Now, obviously, a lot of these players are camp bodies, and 95% of these players are not going to make the final 53-man roster. This happens every year, so some of these players don't expect them to be crazy athletes or crazy good prospects, although there are a couple in here that I have high hopes for and I really like as undrafted free agents. Cameron McDonald's an undersized tight end that doesn't have crazy speed. Obviously, that horrible 40, I think he plays a lot faster than that. He just didn't test well at all. Not really a good blocker, but an okay receiving threat tight end with quick feet. The second player is Benny Sapp III, free safety from Northern Iowa with a 4.4 RAS, so another not great athlete. 5'11", 200 pounds, 20 bench reps. Again, not a great 40-yard dash, 4.62. 20-yard split is okay, 10-yard split not good. A very poor agility grade with a 4.48 shuttle, 7.273 cone, and decent explosion grade with a 35-inch vertical and 10'2" broad jump. The Packers ended up waiting until the 7th round to finally draft a safety in Anthony Johnson Jr. I thought they would address that earlier, so getting a couple safeties as undrafted free agents just to kind of build that room and see which players make it into the final 53 is a good idea. Sapp was a 3-year player at Northern Iowa, which he totaled 138 total tackles, 9 interceptions, and 16 passes deflected. So he was definitely a ball hawk. 4 interceptions in 2022, 4 in 2021, and 1 in 2020. Next on the list is Jason Lewand, defensive tackle out of Illinois State. Now, this player is an athlete, 8.54, 6'6", so really good size here, 292 pounds, so a little light for his 6'6" frame, 5.07 40-yard dash, good 20-yard split, okay 10-yard split, good agility grade, and great explosion grade with a 31-inch vertical and 9'7" broad jump. Lewand is a stiff defensive lineman, but has a extremely high motor and violent hands, and I think just fits into the depth at 3-tech or 5-tech for that defensive line. Obviously, the Packers drafting Colby Wooten and Carl Brooks. Those two guys are obviously definitely making the roster, but I still think there's an open spot for maybe an undrafted free agent or a couple of other guys that are already on the Packers roster for possibly a 6th defensive lineman spot. The 4th player is Malik Heath, wide receiver from Mississippi, a 6.58 RAS. He's 6'2", 213 pounds, has good size as a wide receiver, not a good 40-yard dash, 4.64, poor agility grade with a bad shuttle and a decent 3-cone, and okay explosion grade with a 34-inch vertical and 10'4" broad jump. Malik Heath was a 2-year receiver at Mississippi State before transferring to Ole Miss last year, and Mississippi State in 2020 and 2021, he totaled over 700 yards and 8 touchdowns in those 2 years. Then transferring to Ole Miss, he had 60 receptions last year, 971 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So actually a really, really nice season last year at Ole Miss. He was second to Rashee Rice, and Rice had 1,355 yards, so not a bad undrafted free agent signing here. Malik Heath, he was a good receiver at Ole Miss since transferring there for 2022, and this wide receiver room is young, has a pretty big question mark. You know, outside of Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, who are still only entering their 2nd season, they obviously drafted Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, 2 players I really, really like, and there's a couple other players such as Grant DeBose they drafted in the 7th. They still have some more Torrey, Bo Melton, and now a player like Malik Heath. So I'm very interested to see how this wide receiver room forms and shapes out through the offseason, training camp, and preseason. The next player is offensive tackle Kadeem Telfort from Alabama, Birmingham, a player the Packers actually had a pre-draft visit with, and they ended up signing him as an undrafted free agent. A lot of those pre-draft visits where the guys were, you know, projected 7th rounders or undrafted free agents, they just brought them in to get visits, so they're more inclined to sign there when they do become undrafted. Now, Telfort definitely not an athlete. One of the worst RSs I've seen, but that doesn't matter because the guy has size. Similar to Caleb Jones last year, the guy just has a ton of size. 6'7", 6'7 and a half, 322 pounds, and we see everything else. Very poor speed, agility, and explosion grade in terms of RAS. But you never know with these kind of guys. Some websites had him as like a 5th or 6th round offensive tackle, and the Packers tend to do really good at bringing in these undrafted free agent tackles and really forming them into decent roster depth. Like I said, Caleb Jones, they drafted Rasheed Walker last year. Josh Nijman was an undrafted free agent, so they do really good at forming these bigger offensive tackles into actual good depth, and Kadeem Telfort could become one of those. The next player is another tight end, but more of that fullback slash H-back type of tight end, kind of like Josiah DeGuara. That is Henry Pearson from Appalachian State with a 4.51 RAS. He's 6'2", 249 pounds, 30 bench reps, extremely strong, but again, undersized, but extremely strong. That's why he kind of correlates to the H-back role. A 4.8 40-yard dash, nice 20-yard split. Not a great shuttle or 3-cone, but a good broad jump at 10 foot and 31-inch vertical. This guy definitely has a chance to potentially make the roster. Now, that's Josiah DeGuara's spot, but the Packers have in times kept 2 of these guys. They've kept DeGuara, they've had Dominique Daphne on the roster. A lot of times they do like to have a lot of different types of tight ends. Obviously, drafting 2 tight ends in this draft with Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, they have Josiah DeGuara and Tyler Davis, but they very well could keep a 5th tight end, a type of H-back type of role like Henry Pearson. The next player is an edge player, Keyshawn Banks from San Diego State. A very low RAS at 2.09. He's 6'3", 251 pounds, so pretty undersized for an edge guy. Also very poor explosion and an okay agility grade, and he didn't test the 40-yard dash. He was expected to be an undrafted free agent as he was actually the 514th ranked consensus player. Next on this list, we have a guard, Chuck Filiaga from Minnesota, a decent athlete, 7.89 RAS, 6'5 and a half, 321 pounds, 24 bench reps, 40-yard dash of 5.34, good agility grade with a really nice 3-cone, and a good explosion grade, 29-inch vertical, 8'5 broad jump. He was ranked as a priority free agent, and the Packers, could use some depth at offensive line. So I'm interested to see who the 9 or 10 or so offensive linemen are going to be come 53-man roster. The Packers didn't end up drafting one, which I thought was interesting, but they didn't necessarily need it this year. Obviously, you want to draft for the future, but like I said, with Kadeem Telfort and Filiaga, there are some players that could end up making this roster. This next undrafted free agent I like a lot is Christian Morgan, safety from Baylor. Has a really nice RAS of 8.67 with a nice 40-yard dash, 4.51. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He does have a poor agility grade, but an elite explosion grade with a really nice 40.5-inch vertical and 10 foot 11 broad jump. Morgan's a good all-around safety with fluid hips, good ball skills, and a solid tackler. And there is just such a question mark at the safety position where there's plenty of opportunity for both undrafted free agents Christian Morgan and Benny Sapp at safety to potentially make this roster. Next, we have Deuce Watts, wide receiver out of Tulane, an RAS of 7.0. He's 6'1", 196 pounds, 17 bench reps. Not a great 40-yard dash at 4.59. Very poor agility grade with a bad shuttle and 3-cone, but a great explosion grade with 37.5-inch vertical and 10'5" broad jump. Watts is a long arm wide receiver with good hands and has a knack for getting open. The final player on this list is someone they signed today, and that is Brenton Cox Jr., edge out of Florida. And this is a player that a lot of people are excited about, as a lot of people thought this guy was going to get drafted and surprisingly went undrafted. And a lot of people are saying this is going to be the undrafted free agent that makes the Packers roster. He has an RS of 6.33. He's 6'3", 250 pounds, a 4.82 40, really nice 10-yard split, a good explosion grade with a 33-inch vertical and 9'7" broad jump, but a poor agility grade. Cox was actually ranked as the 174th consensus total player, so it was kind of a surprise that he did indeed go undrafted. He also does have some versatility, like they could play him at edge, or they could even put him at inside linebacker as like a pass rushing inside linebacker, since he's a very consistent tackler and he can move very well laterally. And honestly, I think that's where he'll kind of plug in for the Green Bay defense. I think they might experiment a little bit, but I think he would be more of an inside linebacker. I think his skill set kind of gives him that more in the NFL level than an edge guy, but the Packers have drafted guys and signed guys in the past like Oren Burks, who've played in the inside, played on the outside. So this is another one of those players that I think could definitely make the team, just as like a depth inside the backer that can also rush the passer and a core special teamer. So those are the 13 undrafted free agent players the Packers have signed so far. Like I said, there's one more roster spot, but I'd be willing to bet that'll be like a veteran. Matt LaFleur has said multiple times they expect to bring in a veteran wide receiver, but now that they drafted 3 guys, signed 2 undrafted free agents, I mean, that's going to be a very, very deep room in terms of the amount of players. So we'll see if they end up actually signing a veteran free agent wide receiver. But with one more roster spot, they could definitely sign like a veteran quarterback or safety. But that about does it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you're new here, go down, click the subscribe button, and also leave a like on the video to support my channel. But I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, go Pack Go.